Welcome back, deep divers. Today, we're going to be looking at, Elon Musk, right?
Of course. Who else?
Yeah, I mean, he's always up to something. And this time, we've got two of his companies, Tesla and SpaceX, and their recent, kind of contrasting fortunes.
Yeah, opposite directions almost, right?
Almost, yeah. Like, on one hand, you've got Tesla, and there's this whole thing with this, rejected compensation package for Musk.
A small matter of $56 billion, I believe.
Yeah, $56 billion. It's just mind-boggling. And then you've got SpaceX, and their valuation's just going through the roof, over $175 billion now.
Absolutely soaring.
Yeah. So at first glance, you'd think these are totally unrelated stories, right? One's a legal setback, the other's this huge success story.
Seemingly, yeah.
But here's the thing. They're both connected by this concept of corporate governance.
And that's what we're diving deep into today.
Exactly. So for those who might not be familiar, what exactly is corporate governance?
Well, think of it like this. It's this system of, rules and processes that basically determine how a company is run.
Okay, so the guidelines, kind of?
Exactly. It's all about making sure things are managed responsibly and fairly, that everybody's interests are protected.
So, the guardrails, making sure the company doesn't go off track.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so let's get into it. Starting with Tesla, $56 billion. I mean, that's just an astronomical sum of money. Can you break down why a court would reject a compensation package like that? And it was actually approved back in 2018, so what happened?
Right. So the Delaware court, their decision, it really comes down to how that initial approval went down.
Okay.
They were concerned about whether those negotiations were truly independent.
Yeah.
And whether the shareholders, if they got all the information they needed.
To make a good decision.
Exactly. Because remember, good corporate governance is all about protecting the shareholders.
Right.
And in this case, the court felt that those interests might have been, maybe not fully considered.
And Musk, being Musk, he didn't take this very well, did he?
Not exactly a quiet response.
He called the ruling absolute corruption and even threatened to take Tesla out of Delaware.
A bold move.
Yeah, not your average CEO reaction. So is this a common thing? Do companies often threaten to leave Delaware over stuff like this?
Not really. See, Delaware, it's like the corporate haven,
Right.
They have this well-established system for corporate law.
Right.
And this specific court, known for handling these disputes fairly.
Oh, okay.
So when a company even thinks about leaving Delaware, that sends a message.
Definitely makes you wonder, are other companies watching this closely? What does this mean for corporate governance in general?
It's a big question.
Okay, but before we get too deep into that, let's switch gears for a sec and talk about SpaceX.
To the stars.
Yeah, because they're having amazing success right now. That huge valuation.
Absolutely killing it.
Makes you wonder, does amazing performance like that, does it somehow make corporate governance less important?
That's a really good question. And the short answer is no, absolutely not.
Okay, so why is that?
Because SpaceX's achievements are incredible, no doubt, but good corporate governance. It's not just about avoiding legal trouble.
So it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. It's about building trust with your investors, and ensuring that the company can grow sustainably.
So it's about the long game?
Exactly. Making sure the company is managed in a way that benefits everyone involved, not just about short-term wins.
I see. So it's even if you're doing really well, you still got to make sure you're doing things the right way.
You got it. And we've seen what happens when that doesn't happen. Remember Enron? They were flying high for a while.
Yeah, and then it all came crashing down.
Exactly. And that's why corporate governance matters, even or maybe especially when things are going great.
That makes a lot of sense. So how can we, the average person, apply these lessons from Elon Musk's companies to our own lives?
That's what I love about these stories. They might seem dramatic, but they offer real insights for anyone involved in business.
Even if we're not launching rockets or building electric cars?
Exactly. Whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, or just someone trying to understand the news.
So let's break it down. What are the big takeaways you think our listeners should be thinking about?
First and foremost, robust corporate governance. It matters. It's not just legal jargon. It's about transparency, accountability, having independent oversight.
So it's not just about following the rules, but creating a culture of, doing things the right way.
Exactly. Ethical behavior, responsible decisions. It all starts there.
Okay, that makes sense. What else should our listeners take away from these stories?
Well, the Tesla case really shows how much attention is being paid to executive compensation these days.
Right, how much CEOs are getting paid.
Exactly. People are asking tough questions about whether those huge pay packages are really in line with company performance, with what's good for the shareholders.
Makes sense. Nobody wants to feel like they're being taken advantage of.
Right. It's about making sure everyone benefits from the company's success, not just a few people at the top.
I think we could all get behind that.
And the last takeaway I want to emphasize, it's about balance.
Balance. Okay.
Yeah, balancing innovation with risk.
Okay.
Because Musk, with Tesla and SpaceX, he shows us that strong leadership, being bold, it can be powerful.
Right, like pushing boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you also need the right systems in place to manage those potential downsides. You don't want to crush creativity, but you also got to make sure decisions are made responsibly.
So it's like even when you're aiming for the stars, you still need a safety net.
That's a great way to put it.
It's fascinating how these stories, they seem so different at first.
Right.
But they actually show us just how complicated the business world really is.
Absolutely. And the best part is we've only just scratched the surface.
That's right. There's so much more to explore. So let's dive back in and unpack these ideas even further.
It really is fascinating, how these two stories kind of play out.
Yeah.
Tesla and SpaceX, they highlight different ways corporate governance works or doesn't.
Right, like two sides of the same coin almost.
Exactly. You got this compensation controversy with Tesla, and then SpaceX just taking off like a rocket.
Yeah. And it begs the question, what's the secret sauce over at SpaceX? Is it just Musk himself? Or are there, specific corporate governance practices that are making a difference?
That's the big question, right?
I mean, their valuation, it's just insane how much it's gone up. What's driving that growth?
Well, a couple of things, really. First, you got Starlink, their satellite internet service.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
It's gaining a lot of traction, opening up a whole new market for them. And second, their partnership with NASA.
For the moon missions, right.
Exactly. And that's a huge sign of confidence from, one of the biggest players in the space industry.
So it's not just hype. They're delivering results, building real partnership.
Absolutely. But let's circle back to Tesla for a minute. The compensation case. Can you help us understand, why the court sided with the shareholders?
Yeah, I think I'm still a little fuzzy on the details. What were the specific concerns that led to the rejection?
Okay, so the court, they really focused on the independence of the negotiations, or rather, the lack of it.
Uh-huh. So how independent was the board?
Exactly. They questioned whether the board of directors, the ones who approved the package, could really act independently of Musk.
That makes sense. I mean, he's the CEO, the founder, a major shareholder.
It's hard to separate those roles.
Yeah. So how do you make sure the board can be truly objective?
That's the challenge, right? Good corporate governance is all about having those checks and balances.
Right, to keep things fair.
Exactly. You got to make sure decisions are made in the best interest of the company as a whole, not just for one person.
Even if that person is, Elon Musk.
Even then.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, right? Musk is known for being very hands-on.
Oh, yeah. He's got that reputation.
Unconventional leadership style, some might say. So wouldn't putting too many restrictions on him, wouldn't that stifle innovation?
That's a good point. It's like, how do you balance strong leadership with good corporate governance?
The age-old question, right? You need bold decisions, but you also need those checks.
It's a tightrope walk, almost.
Exactly. Too much control, you stifle creativity. Too little, and things can go off the rails.
And it's not just about Tesla and SpaceX, is it? These are issues that every business has to deal with.
Every single one. Think about it. If you were to invest in a company,
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to know they had good corporate governance, that their decisions were ethical, responsible?
Absolutely. As an investor, I'd want to know my money was being used wisely.
Exactly. And as a consumer,
Oh, right. We have power as consumers, too.
you can choose to support businesses that align with your values.
Companies that are transparent, treat their employees
I
fairly,
got it. It's about being an informed consumer.
and using our voices to demand better corporate governance from the companies we interact with.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But before we get too deep into that,
Yeah.
we got to address the big question mark hanging over this whole thing. What if Musk actually follows through with his threat?
So leave Delaware.
Yeah. What kind of precedent would that set? It'd be huge for Delaware. I mean, their reputation as a business-friendly state,
Right, they're known for that.
it would send shockwaves, no doubt. Imagine the impact on their legal system and then the ripple effect.
Yeah, like would other states see an opportunity, maybe try to attract businesses by, loosening their own corporate laws?
It's a real possibility. Like a race to the bottom, maybe?
Or maybe it could actually lead to, like, a national conversation about corporate governance.
That's a good point. Could go either way, really. But for now, it's all speculation.
We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
Exactly. But one thing's for sure, this story isn't over yet.
I have a feeling you're right about that.
Yeah.
But before we move on to the next part, I want to bring it back to our listeners for a second.
Always got to keep them in mind.
Because we've been talking about these high-profile cases, but how does this stuff actually impact everyday people?
That's a great point. It's easy to get lost in the drama of it all.
Yeah, but we got to connect these ideas back to the real world.
Think about the companies you interact with every day. The products you buy.
Oh, right.
Are they transparent?
Yeah.
Ethical? These questions, they all tie back to corporate governance.
It's about being an informed consumer, making smart choices.
Absolutely. And it's about understanding that as investors, even small-time investors, we have a voice.
We can advocate for good corporate governance.
Exactly. It all comes back to that.
Okay, I'm feeling much more empowered now. But before we wrap things up, I'm curious about one more thing.
Let's hear it.
We've talked a lot about Tesla, SpaceX, but what about Elon Musk himself? His personality, his leadership style, how do those factor into all of this?
That's a great question to think about.
Yeah.
And it's the perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive.
You know it. We've got some really interesting insights coming up, so stay tuned. All right, deep divers, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Elon Musk, corporate governance, and, well, those contrasting fortunes of Tesla and SpaceX.
It's been a wild ride.
It has. We've talked about a lot, from those boardroom battles to, billion-dollar valuations. But before we wrap up, I'm curious about one more thing.
Go ahead.
We focused a lot on the companies, but what about the man at the helm, Elon Musk himself? How much of this comes down to his personality, his leadership?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, he's brilliant, innovative, no doubt.
Oh, yeah, no question.
Pushing boundaries, challenging the status quo. But the Tesla situation, it kind of shows us that same boldness can rub people the wrong way.
Especially when it comes to corporate governance.
Exactly. It's like he's a force of nature, right?
Yeah.
Disrupting industries, taking on these huge challenges.
Like doing things his way.
Right. But maybe, sometimes, that relentless drive, it comes at a cost. Maybe those checks and balances, they get overlooked.
So do you think this is a case of him learning a lesson the hard way? Or will he just keep doing things his own way, consequences or not?
It's tough to say. Only time will tell how he responds to all this. Does he double down?
Yeah.
Or does he, address those concerns about Tesla's governance?
And what about SpaceX? Can they keep this incredible momentum going while still playing by the rules?
That's what we got to watch. So far, they've done a pretty good job balancing innovation and responsibility.
Right. They're building those partnerships, attracting investors.
But as they grow, as they move into new areas, it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that balance going.
I think it's safe to say we'll be talking about Elon Musk and his companies for a long time to come.
It keeps things interesting, that's for sure.
He does. He's a fascinating figure, always pushing the limits. But I think this deep dive, it's shown us something important.
What's that?
That even the most groundbreaking innovations, they still need a solid foundation. Ethical behavior, responsible governance.
Couldn't agree more. It's a reminder that no matter how brilliant, how successful you are, you got to play by the rules.
The rules apply to everyone.
Exactly. And those rules, they exist for a reason. They keep things fair. They protect everyone involved.
Well said. It's been amazing exploring these complex issues with you. And to our listeners, we hope you've gained a better understanding of corporate governance and how much it really matters.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, you can find all those articles, resources we talked about in the show notes. Keep exploring these ideas. Keep asking those tough questions about the companies you interact with. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.